Well, welcome again to another episode of Business Ahas. And not that long ago, I had a buddy on. By the way, if you got to watch the other episode first, and then say pause, and then go back and watch this one. So a friend of mine was on, Pat Freer. He talked about taking chances and talk about don't say no. And someone offers you an opportunity, say yes. And you'll hear a story about a kid when he was 18 years old. He was offered to go get an application to join what became his career, and he wasn't planning on it. 30 plus years later, he had an incredible career in the industry he worked for. And I don't know, probably a few years back, we were having some conversations about his, in my opinion, and his opinion as well, and how I heard him kind of describe this next human is one of the most influential individuals in his entire life. And John Buturla was a cop, and he started to grow his career as a cop and became a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, assistant chief, deputy chief, chief again, and he kind of grew, and he grew in the industry because of being a good guy and really understanding what it means to take care of my fellow troops. So it's absolutely a thrill for me today to not only have John with us today, Chief Buturla, and I invited Pat back. He goes, I ain't coming there. I'm like, come on, Pat. It's John. He love for you to be here, and Pat is with us as well. And you'll get a little bit of Pat a little bit later and have his perspective as John tells his stories. Public service is a big deal. And when we give back our life and our souls to giving back to public service, I'm honored and blessed today with my friend Pat Freer. Pat, thanks for being here.
How you doing?
Good.
How are we doing? Okay, there we go.
And Chief John.
Hi, buddy.
Great seeing you, man.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it. And it's great to have Pat here, too.
Yeah, so it was interesting when you're getting started today and you're getting dressed, and we get all ready to come on to be videotaped. You put a little lapel on over on your right lapel over there.
Yes.
What's the story behind that? I'd like to start there, if you don't mind.
That's, no, I don't mind at all. That is a pin that signifies that I went to the FBI National Academy. I was part of the 199th session, and we were the last centurions. We were the last class in the century. Graduated in December of 1999, and it's made up of police officers, leaders in law enforcement, usually the executive level, traditionally lieutenants and above. And I happened to be a lieutenant at the time with the Connecticut State Police, and I had the privilege of going. But it's usually the top 1% of law enforcement get to go to the National Academy, and it's a phenomenal organization. It's phenomenal for a variety of different reasons. It's part academic, part physical, and part social. And a big part of it is when you are sitting there at night after class, after you've done all your accredited college work, you're sitting there talking amongst peers, and you realize how, if you're from New Zealand or if you're from Connecticut, you share the same problems, just with slightly different twists upon them. So there's a lot of conversation back and forth where you can learn from one another about how to deal with situations and problems. It was truly a great experience.
That's awesome. So let's back up the train, maybe 150, 200 stops. What made you decide, like, I want to be a cop?
I do believe that it is a calling. If you're truly going to take on this role in law enforcement, something calls you to it. And I think everybody that you talk to will say the same thing. It's because I want to get into it in order to help people. And that is a big part of it. And as you progress through your career, you see that is a significant part of it. For me, I had the benefit of growing up in a household where my father was a police officer. And so I watched him every day, day in and day out, and how he did his business and how he did the business of policing. And he progressed through the ranks and ended up eventually retiring as the detective captain in the Stratford, Connecticut Police Department.
Back east.
Back east. And I also had my grandfather on my mother's side was a fire chief. And I had an uncle on that side of the family that was a battalion chief in a fire department. So I had a lot of very positive public service role models that I watched. And my grandfather was a phenomenal human being. And it goes back to the days when they literally he had a red phone in his bedroom that was a direct hardwired phone from fire headquarters to his house. Always had the fire scanner on, so he always knew what was going on. We'd be over there for Sunday dinners, and a call would come in. He'd look at us, "You guys want to go?" So it was usually my two brothers and I. We would we were obviously the oldest of 5 kids, so we'd get to go in the car one with him and end up going out to fire scenes and end up riding on the back of fire trucks at parades. And it was kind of that's probably how I got instilled in me this need to serve the public.
How old were you when you applied for the job?
So I had told my father was a World War II vet, and I told my father that I'm thinking about going into the service. And he said, "John, that's fine. You can do that. But if you go in, you will go in as an officer," which meant Dad wanted me to go to college. So I started going to college, and I still had this in the back of my mind, this sense that, being a police officer would be pretty cool. And I remember being a senior in high school. My father was out at a murder scene, and I came home from school, and I asked my mom where Dad is because it was late, and she said he's had a murder. That was one of the first opportunities I had to actually see detectives working, and I had this desire to be one of those detectives. Well, so 18 years old, I'm in college, and I started taking tests. That's when at 18 you could be a police officer. I was fortunate enough at 19 years old to get hired by the Trumbull, Connecticut Police Department. And I spent about 3.5 years there. And then in that time period, 18, 19, 20, I was still taking tests for other departments. Primarily I was taking tests for the state police in Connecticut. I was blessed, truly blessed to be a police officer at 19. And, I knew I was doing something right during the course of my career in Trumbull, because one day the chief stopped me in the hallway. I was walking down the hallway, and he said, "John," he says, "I got to tell you something." He said, I've hired 25, 26, 27-year-old guys, and you are much more mature and level-headed than they are. But at 19, 20 years old, I seemed to be doing something right.
Gotcha.
And I think it was because of the way I was brought up.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Career is moving along, starting to grow. You're starting to get into your groove. When did you actually realize I'm kind of a leader? And maybe there's not a defining moment, but where you actually had this feeling like, I love helping. I love aiding my other fellow cops to be better. Was there a period when that actually hit you?
There was a defining moment for me. I had a 1967 Corvette that I restored, and I took it to a car show. And I was standing at the car show and kind of wandering or looking out of the cars, and a young lady walked up to me, and she said, "You're a police officer." So I had this moment where I was trying to realize, how do I know her? Because the first thing is it puts you on the defensive. Because I was pretty good throughout my entire life of remembering people's faces and things like that, and I just didn't remember her face. So I was trying to put it together, and she said, "You knocked on our door one night. You rang our doorbell, and you came to our house to tell my family that my brother had been killed in a fatal accident."
And you had no idea who that was.
Well,
You knew who it was. You didn't know who she was.
I did not know. And she
Okay.
was younger, but
So she remembered you.
she remembered me. And she said the way forgot how she phrased it specifically, but the way you talked to us and our family and the fact that you stayed with us, it really kind of made me think about it. Well, I must be doing something right here. I must be, you know, just the way I deal with people or talking to people. And, we as police officers, and you said it's, first responders, we are in the unique position where we come into people's lives at their absolute worst times.
The worst day of their life.
And we are blessed to be going into their lives at those times. And it's how you can
Hang on a
deal with
second.
them.
With all due respect, you said we are blessed. You feel as though you are blessed.
Yes,
Some don't, and that's their choice.
that is.
And just because somebody wants to judge the ones that don't feel that way, that's not a reflection upon most.
No,
That's important.
that's extremely important. 100%. That is extremely important. And that's and so I recognize, a lot of things from that one. She took the time to approach me and say those things, and I realized I must be doing something right. I must be the way I do, and it has stuck with me. And I was a trooper by then, and I probably had, I would say probably 8, 9, probably 7 or 8 years in law enforcement at that time. And I got promoted to sergeant shortly after that. And you're a young sergeant, so you kind of got to prove yourself all over again to people. And I had a platoon of troopers, and they range from rookies right out of the academy to the senior person on the platoon was a guy with 25 plus years on. He was a very well-respected, seasoned 25 plus years. And he was leaving our platoon. He was going into an assignment where he was going to be a resident state trooper. And he looked at everybody around the table and he said, "Sarge, I want to tell you something. I would follow you anywhere." It's like, wow. I don't think anybody to that point had said anything that stuck with me. And he said, he said, "You are a guy that all these people," and he looked at all the younger, much younger troopers and said, you need to listen to him."
Did you think for yourself for a second and say to yourself, maybe, why? Or why me?
I did.
Why?
But I kept thinking the same thing. I kept thinking, I must be doing something right. I kind of, throughout, I had a lot of, my career progressed. And I ended up in situations where I was responsible for a lot bigger things. And some of those were extremely challenging, a challenging time in our country's history, and dealing with a lot of different nuances with new things. And I realized that it is directly related to how I, as an individual, communicate with other people. And it's communication and how you deal with people. And it doesn't hurt us as police officers, or us as first responders, or us as citizens of this earth, to just show a little sympathy, empathy, kindness towards other people. And you'd be surprised how you can truly change somebody's life. And I've seen it. I've seen police officers reaching into their own pockets to buy people food that didn't have any.
Sure.
Me included. But you do things just because it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
And I stuck with that. Just keep doing the right thing. Keep dealing with people.
So I'm going to ask maybe an unusual question. I wasn't really planning to ask it since Pat's with us today. Is how'd you meet Pat?
I was fortunate enough to be appointed as the police chief for the town of Stratford, Connecticut. And one of the good people that I met there was this lieutenant named Pat Freer. And Pat and I really hit it off.
You say that's me, right?
And
That's me.
Oh,
yeah.
that's you. Okay,
This
yeah.
guy.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
Lieutenant Pratt Fear at the time.
Yeah.
You're probably not another one, probably though, right?
No.
the one and only.
The one and only.
I want to know.
I don't think they want a second. Thing.
So, Pat, real quick, would you mind telling that's really abbreviated version of the story when you decided to erase all the records?
So
he was your chief, right?
yes, he was my chief,
Right,
it
and
was
you were
fun.
in charge of all the records, right?
I was,
Yeah.
and actually, he was a chief from outside the department. He was somebody that we didn't know, so I got to know him from when he came in. I was up in training, and part of that, in our report writing system, they weren't what they are today, and we would have to, in order to speed up the system, we would have to go back and purge a couple years worth, put them into folders, blah blah blah. I was on the phone with the person who ran the computer system. He was helping me through this. And we did 1 year, we deleted it, went pretty quick because we put it in another folder, put it another year, et cetera, et cetera. And then this last one we're doing was taking a while. I'm like, man, it's taking a while. It's about lunchtime. I said, well, we'll break for lunch and I'll call you back when it's over. And he said, okay, great. And so I go to lunch and I came back. It'd been about an hour. And one of the officers comes up and says to the sergeant, hey, Sarge, I can't find my report from earlier this morning. It's not in the system. And a light bulb went off in my head, and I went, that might be something I'm working on. And so
So hang on a second. You were a sergeant at the time.
No,
He was.
I was a lieutenant.
Oh, you were talking to the sergeant.
Correct.
Okay, and he goes, "Hey, Char, hey,
I
LT.
overheard this
gotcha."
patrolman asking the sergeant, and I didn't say anything. I ran upstairs and I looked, and I just see delete all this slow deleting. And I called the guy. I said, "This is still deleting." He's like, "Well, did you put them in a folder?" I went, "I thought I did." Right? And he's like, "Well, I told you to do it." I said, "Maybe I did, maybe I didn't." Anyway, we stopped the delete. He then went in and looked and said, "Yes, in fact, I just deleted all the records for the police department for the last 3 or 4 years."
So let's fast forward then. You go see your boss.
So I'm like, "Oh no, I have to tell somebody." And as I'm walking downstairs, I see Chief coming back from lunch, and I said, "Chief, got him in?" He said, "Sure, Pat, come on in." And I walked into his office and I said, okay, well, I don't know how else to say it except to tell you that I just deleted all the records for the entire police department for the last 3 or 4 years. And he looked at me and went, all of them? And I said, that's what they're telling me. And he went, oh, okay. Like, not upset, not mad, just, okay. Was there a backup? And I went, oh my God, I don't know. I didn't even think I just heard I deleted everything. I thought, oh no, this is going to be bad. I said, I'll find out. What if we don't? He said, well, I mean, it's mostly on paper. We'll deal with it. Like, that was literally his whole attitude was, we'll deal with it.
As opposed to,
what the hell's the matter with you? You ruined everything.
or
you're fired.
or losing a complete gasket.
Yeah. And I'm still like, oh no. He goes, are you okay? And I went, I don't know if I should shit or throw up. I said, I really don't know what to do right now. Those are my exact words to him. I don't know if I should.
Well, Chief, I bring up the story because a word you said a minute ago, and that was people.
Yeah.
And by having people like this that in your department, and to err is human, right?
It is.
And how you respond to that is going to help them make them who they are. And if you respond to it in a way that you could be like, are you absolutely kidding? Or, you know what? You adapt and overcome, right?
One way or another, we were going to fix it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes you hit the delete button when you shouldn't have, and sometimes you don't put them in folders.
And you could tell probably at that moment there was no malicious intent.
No.
And maybe if there was a certain level of malicious intent, that's a whole nother story, right?
Well, that takes it to a different level. But
Yeah.
but in Pat's case, he was. You have to admire somebody who walks in your office and says, I think I just deleted all these records, and he's telling the God's honest truth. Those were his exact words. I thought he was going to get sick in front of me.
Yeah.
But
you said should have throw up, right?
Yeah. Well, and here's what I'll tell you too, because he said to me, he goes, well, how did it happen? Did so-and-so do this or whatever? I said, listen, I don't know who did what. I'm the guy that hit delete. I'm the one that did it, boss.
Yeah.
Like, it was me. Right? I'm not going to blame that guy. I don't remember how that went, and I think he respected that too.
So it's interesting.
Absolutely.
I'm going to use a word here in a minute. I'm going to come back to it in a little bit later, and you might figure out why I'm saying it. So you had the situation happen. You came back from lunch, found out what's going on. Sergeant approached you. You found out they were all deleted. You went to the chief, and the chief did something to choose to take a direction. he de-escalated
Mhm.
the situation,
For sure.
right?
100%.
You didn't escalate it.
No,
Right. So he was
No
obviously already escalated.
he was. That, Jim, that's going to be an understatement. But
Yeah.
yes.
So let's go ahead and skip one step forward now. So in your career, now spanning 40 plus years, man,
Yes.
what was that one thing that you remember going, I'll be a monkey's uncle?
That is a tough question. That is a very hard question. I think the one thing that I will say is that over the years, and right after 9/11, I got appointed as the first Deputy Director for Homeland Security for the state of Connecticut, and then went on to be the Governor's Homeland Security Advisor, Director of Homeland Security. Huge time in our country. And it was challenging because we were dealing with all kinds of different people and entities, and a lot of money started flowing into states to be distributed to first responders to better prepare our country. Not just first responders, but protect the critical infrastructure, protect citizens, protect ourselves with personal protective equipment, all those things. I kept telling my people that when we're dealing with everybody, always take the high road. Always take the high road. And people are going to try to drag you down. They're going to try to come after things. Everybody wants, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars of new money coming in for everything. And it was our responsibility to distribute that. So everybody, there are some people that were a little greedier than others who wanted a bigger slice of that pie. And I kept telling our people, take the high road. Listen to what they have to say. Don't get into it. Don't get into the weeds. Bring back your issues, and I will deal with them. And so that whole concept of taking the high road, I've probably done that.
Always.
So
would it be fair to say that my aha moment, yours, is take the high road and don't change? If someone says this is the course of action, you say, I agree. Unless something catastrophic happens, don't change.
Well, policing and public safety is a very fluid environment, usually when you're dealing with things. But yes,
things happen quickly.
Yes, they do. So
but fundamentals don't have to change.
No.
Interesting.
No. And I think that is an aha moment where, it's take the high road, be the better person, be the bigger person, always try to be.
And it's not always easy.
It's sometimes it's extremely difficult.
So is it fair to say that if we have to distill it down, it says always take the high road and don't change. Be you.
Well, and I feel like I've always been this person, and I've always been the person that I am, where I will believe in taking the high road, and I believe in taking care of people. I believe in taking care of my people, making sure they're okay, making sure that always. So there's nothing more valuable than that.
So it's really interesting, and it actually is kind of apropos. Just 2 days ago, I had the opportunity to meet this gentleman. I'm going to show photos here, and I'll show it to the camera. And he was having a conversation with a group of us as I kind of pan in to show who this is. And he made a comment about always taking the high road. He made a comment of always taking care of his people. He made a comment of always making sure that his people always first.
Yeah.
So he was a pilot. And every single time he got on the airplane that he was a pilot of, he'd get on board. He would walk all the way to the tail end of the airplane and all the way back to the front of the airplane. And he would thank every single person that was flying on the airplane today. And this is Colonel Tillman. And those you may recognize his name. He was a pilot and the commander of Air Force One on 9/11.
Oh, good. Oof.
On 9/11.
Wow.
You mentioned 9/11 a minute ago.
Yeah.
He's also the commander of Air Force One that flew the only president in U.S. history into an active military zone on Thanksgiving.
I remember that.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that story, and I was with the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's telling the story, and we're kind of amongst a large group of individuals, and he tells the story of this covert mission. They were in Crawford, Texas, and he had dinner with his family, and he kind of snuck off the back door and hopped in Air Force One. So Colonel Tillman says, "Hey, we're not going to be able to make it all the way from Crawford, Texas to Afghanistan with one tank of fuel. We got to stop and fuel up." So what they decided to do is they flew from Crawford, Texas to Edwards Air Force Base, got out of Air Force One, walked down it, walked into Air Force One, the second airplane, because there are two, and off they went. And probably the most compelling thing he said during that entire story, which I think reminds me of you, John. If this happened to you, this is exactly what President Bush did all the way to Afghanistan. He flew in the cockpit.
Wow.
The whole time.
That's
And for us as gentlemen, we kind of think back of the word character.
sure.
Character of
100%.
kind of who we are, what we stand for as leaders, making a difference in people's lives, making it about people
It is.
and making it about relationships that we have, having that level of consistency and not changing your course of action. And I think it's coincidental because I just met the guy, and for him to tell his story, kind of the epitome. Yeah, I'm a pilot. I was an Air Force pilot. Yeah, I'm a colonel, but yeah, I happen to be the commander of Air Force One. You're like, oh shit, but different level.
Mhm.
But if you think about it, his level's here, and your level's here, and your level's here, and my level's here. Does it matter? In my humble opinion,
It doesn't matter.
no.
No,
It's
not at all.
because it's all about what?
It's all about people, and it's all about
Taking care of your people.
Yep.
Well, let me say this too. When John here mentioned they were my people, I don't know if you remember him saying that. I remember soon after he became chief, he went to an award ceremony, and a detective got an award for something, and he said, "I would like to introduce my detective, so and so." And I remember thinking to myself, "That's the first time in all my career that anybody in any of my leadership ever took ownership of us being one of theirs."
My detective.
Yeah.
Interesting. Colonel Tillman, know what he says? My plane.
Yeah.
I'm like, hang on a second. This plane cost, and he said this, and I'm still remember this, $377,000 an hour to fly.
That's it. Wow. They got it.
And so, and he says, it's my plane. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, well, there is that, because we're all put our socks on the same way,
we
right?
definitely
Yeah.
do.
And we're all about making a difference in our people who work with us, not for us.
Right. And that was honestly, I took a lot of things from the chief, but that was one of the things that I took from him is I do that. And I say, one of my people did that. You know what I mean? I always like take ownership of that. And I hope they appreciate it, because that's what I do. And I also like to say, as you're saying, don't change. I think what he's saying is, because he said it several times at the beginning, just keep doing what I'm doing. Like, I must be doing something right, so keep doing what I'm doing.
Yes.
And treat people right.
Correct. So it's like not change. It's consistency and continuing the path that you're on because it's working.
With your values.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're right. Thank you.
So I'll call that a kind of a unique aha moment. It isn't like that one thing.
Right.
Like Pat saying, I went and got the application. I changed my trajectory forever. And his message was, take a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But don't say no. Right.
I agree. And there is, and that's the unique thing about what we do, is there are multiple aha moments. We used to say when we were detectives, aha. You know?
Aha.
Yeah. We used to.
There's a gun.
Yes.
Oh, well,
That's
that's
a
kind
good
of an aha moment.
Yeah. So we had a lot of aha moments over the years.
Yeah. I'm sure you probably do.
Yeah.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Jim.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having me so
Hey,
much. It's been
and
great.
Pat, I'm glad you're here, brother.
Thanks for having me.
I got to introduce us together, and
Yeah.
it made a big difference at
Good,
the end of the
finally.
day. And on behalf of our entire team at Board Developer, big shout out to Rift,
Yeah.
who's our sponsor and provides us a great space for our aha moments. And Bennett, you're not seeing, is behind the scenes pushing buttons and making sure that everything operates. But listen to that. I think listen to the message of it doesn't have to be one thing. It does kind of have to be of kind of who you are on the inside and how you treat people and how you treat them genuinely. and how you care about them and show them you care about them. Yeah, so hey, on behalf of our entire board developer team, I already mentioned accolades to everybody who's involved. Thanks for watching, and next time, hopefully, we'll have even a more fun, exciting time on Business Ahas. You ever have an interest in being on the show, let me know. Let somebody know, and we'll get you set up, because I'll tell you what, these are fun. They're fun because at the end of the day, you kind of talk about what makes difference in people's lives and how much we care about other people, and how much our heart in the most deepest level helps other people be more successful at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, when you're laying on your deathbed, you're not thinking about all the things you accomplished. You're thinking about the people who love you. And the people who love you are the family you choose and the family you have. And the family you choose are the ones you want to be around. Family you have are the ones you kind of want to be around sometimes. At the end of the day, though, it's about the people in our lives. So on behalf of our entire team, thanks a lot. Until next time, take care. Bye.